At 2:17 a.m., every child on Alder Street woke up at the same time, walked out of their houses, and vanished into the darkness. None of them were ever seen again, except one. And what he said before he died made the police seal the entire town. Alder Street was a quiet road in the small American town of Harper's Creek. Nothing ever happened there. It was the kind of street where neighbors waved every morning, where kids rode bikes after school, where the loudest sound at night was crickets. But on October 14, 2025, something impossible happened. At exactly 2:17 a.m., security cameras across Alder Street recorded something strange. Every single child on that street woke up at the same moment. Not slowly, not confused. They all sat up in their beds at the exact same second, like someone had called them. The first camera. Police first noticed it on the camera of House 12. The camera inside the hallway showed 8-year-old Lucas Reed leaving his bedroom. His eyes were open. But something was wrong. He was walking slowly, stiffly, like a puppet. He walked down the hallway, unlocked the front door, and stepped outside, barefoot, into the cold. Then another camera. At House 14, 6-year-old Emily Torres did the same thing. She opened her window, climbed out, and began walking down the street. No jacket, no shoes, just walking. Then another. House 9, House 17, House 20. One by one, every child on the street walked out of their homes. No crying, no talking, just silent walking, all moving in the same direction, toward the old forest road at the end of Alder Street. Parents didn't wake up. The strange part was the parents. None of them woke up. Later, doctors tested them. Every parent had been in abnormally deep sleep, like they had been drugged. But no drugs were found. The only witness. One person saw the children leave. Mr. Harold Whitaker, a 72-year-old retired mechanic. He suffered from insomnia. That night he was sitting by his window drinking tea when he noticed something strange. Children, walking outside. Dozens of them, all heading toward the woods. Whitaker opened his door and shouted, "Hey, where are your parents?" None of them responded. They just kept walking. Then he saw something worse. Whitaker later told police something that made the room go silent. The children were not alone. At the far end of the street, standing under the broken streetlight, was a man, tall, thin, holding something long in his hand. At first Whitaker thought it was a shovel. But when the man stepped into the light, Whitaker realized the truth. It was a weapon, but not a normal weapon. It looked homemade. Metal pieces welded together. Sharp hooks, blades, chains. A weapon built to hurt. The man didn't move. He just stood there, watching the children approach, like he had been waiting for them. Whitaker said the children walked past him one by one, and each child stopped for a second, as if the man was giving them something. Whitaker couldn't see what it was. But after that, each child disappeared into the woods. The last child, the final child, was 9-year-old Daniel Carter. He stopped in front of the man. But something went wrong. Daniel suddenly stepped back, like he was scared. Whitaker heard him whisper something. 3 words. Then the man grabbed him and dragged him into the forest. Police arrive. At 6:30 a.m., the first parent noticed their child missing. Within an hour, the entire street was in panic. Police searched the woods. Dogs, helicopters, hundreds of volunteers. But they found nothing. No footprints, no clothes, no blood, just silence. Until 3 days later, police received a call from a farmer 20 miles away. He had found a boy walking on the side of the road, barefoot, covered in dirt. It was Daniel Carter, the last child. But something was terribly wrong. Daniel wasn't speaking. He just kept repeating one sentence over and over. The sentence. Police recorded it, and later sealed the recording. But one detective leaked what Daniel said. The boy whispered, "He gave us the weapons, and told us to finish the game. That night, Daniel Carter died in the hospital. Cause of death unknown. But before he died, he drew a picture. A man, standing in the woods, surrounded by children, each one holding a different weapon. And written at the top of the drawing were 2 words. Round 2. 3 days after Daniel Carter died, Harper's Creek stopped feeling like a normal town. Police cars were everywhere. The woods at the end of Alder Street were sealed off with yellow tape. And the parents of the missing children had stopped sleeping. Because every night at 2:17 a.m., something strange happened again. The security cameras on the street turned on by themselves. But there were no children anymore. Only the empty road. And sometimes, a shadow moving near the forest. Detective Mara Collins. The case was given to Detective Mara Collins, a woman known for solving impossible crimes. She had worked murder cases for 14 years. But she had never seen anything like this. 27 children had disappeared in one night. No struggle. No screams. No evidence. Just footprints leading into the forest. And then nothing. Daniel's drawing. The only real clue was the drawing Daniel made before he died. Detective Collins placed the picture on the table in the police station. A tall man. Long arms. A strange weapon in his hand. Children standing around him. Each holding something sharp. Something dangerous. Something different. Knives. Chains. Metal hooks. Axes. Weapons. But there was something even stranger. The man in the drawing had no face. Just a blank circle. The words. At the top of the drawing were 2 words. Round 2. Collins stared at the words for a long time. Then she asked the question that made the entire room quiet. Round 2 of what? No one had an answer. The search in the forest. The next morning police searched the forest again. This time they went deeper. Much deeper. Nearly 5 miles inside the woods. That's where Officer Grant noticed something strange. The ground looked disturbed. Like something had been buried recently. They started digging. At first they thought it was nothing. Just rocks. Then the shovel hit metal. The box. They pulled out a large wooden box. It was old. Rotting. And locked with heavy chains. On the lid were carved words. Deep scratch marks. 3 words. For the children. The officers looked at each other. Something about the box felt wrong. Like opening it would be a mistake. But Detective Collins ordered them to break the chains. Inside the box. When the lid opened, everyone stepped back. Inside were weapons. Dozens of them. Homemade weapons. Rusty blades. Broken machetes. Metal rods with nails hammered through them. Hooks attached to chains. Some looked old. Some looked freshly made. But the worst part was what covered them. Dried blood. Then they found something worse. Under the weapons was a photograph. A black and white picture from 1989. It showed a group of children standing in the same forest. Behind them stood a tall man. Thin. Long arms. Just like Daniel's drawing. But his face had been scratched out of the photo. The name on the back. Detective Collins flipped the photo over. Written in faded ink were 5 words. The first game, 1989. Collins felt cold. Because the town records showed something strange about that year. In 1989, Harper's Creek had another missing children case. Not 27 children, but 6. They vanished near the same forest road. The case was never solved. But there was one survivor. Police records showed one child came back. A boy named Evan Holt. He was found wandering near a highway 2 days later. Just like Daniel Carter. And just like Daniel, Evan kept repeating the same sentence. Over and over. Until the day he died. The sentence. Detective Collins found the old recording in the archives. The tape was damaged. But the voice was still clear. A terrified child whispering. He gave us the weapons. And told us the last one alive wins. Collins turned the tape off. Her hands were shaking. Because that meant only one thing. 27 children went into those woods. But the man only needed one to survive. That night, at 2:17 a.m., the security cameras on Alder Street turned on again. The police were watching live from the station. The street was empty, silent. Then something moved near the forest road. A small figure stepped into the camera light. Everyone leaned closer to the screen. It was a child, one of the missing children, standing in the middle of the street, holding something in his hand, a weapon. And behind him, more children began walking out of the forest. And they were not the same anymore. At 2:17 a.m., the police station in Harper's Creek became completely silent. Every officer was staring at the live security camera feed from Alder Street. The first child stood in the middle of the road. It was Marcus Hill, a 10-year-old boy who had disappeared 3 nights earlier. His clothes were dirty. His feet were covered in dried mud. And in his hand, he was holding a long metal rod with nails hammered through it. No one spoke. Then something moved behind him. Another child stepped out of the forest. Then another. And another. Within seconds, 26 children slowly walked onto the road. All of them were holding something. Knives, axes, chains, broken metal tools, weapons. The same weapons that were found inside the wooden box in the forest. Something was wrong. Detective Mara Collins leaned closer to the screen. The children looked alive. But they didn't look normal. Their faces were pale. Their eyes were empty. None of them were talking. They were just standing there, waiting, like soldiers waiting for an order. The last child. Then the final child stepped out of the forest. The officers gasped, because the last child was Emily Torres, the 6-year-old girl who had climbed out of her window that night. She was holding something heavy, a small axe. The blade was dark with dried blood. But Emily was smiling, slowly, quietly, like she knew something terrible. The broadcast. Suddenly, the police station speakers made a loud static sound. The security system was being hacked. The camera zoomed in by itself, closer to the children, closer and closer. Then a voice came through the speakers, deep, calm, and cold. Round 2 has begun. Every officer in the room froze. Detective Collins grabbed the microphone connected to the street speakers. "Who are you?" she shouted. No answer. Only silence. Then the voice spoke again. The children finished the forest game. Now they must finish the town. Panic. Collins immediately grabbed her radio. All units move to Alder Street now. Police cars raced through the quiet town, sirens screaming through the night. But when they arrived, the street was empty again. The children were gone. The first attack. The first emergency call came 10 minutes later. A man screaming into the phone. "There's kids in my backyard." Then a loud crash. Then silence. When police arrived at the house, they found the back door broken, furniture destroyed, blood on the kitchen floor. But no bodies. Only one thing left behind. A weapon. A rusty knife. Small fingerprints covered the handle. The second call. Another call came from the other side of town. Then another. Then another. The missing children were moving through Harper's Creek, breaking into houses, disappearing before police arrived. No one knew what they were doing, until Detective Collins noticed something on the town map. Every attack was happening near the same 6 houses. The old addresses. Collins checked the town records again. Her heart started beating faster. Those 6 houses belonged to people connected to the 1989 case. One was a retired police officer. One was a former teacher. One was the old mayor. All of them had worked on the investigation when 6 children disappeared in the forest. The terrible realization. Collins whispered the words slowly. "They're not attacking random houses. They're hunting." The children were going after the people who knew about the first game. The old survivor. There was only one person left who might know the truth. The survivor from 1989. Evan Holt. But when Collins checked the records again, she discovered something disturbing. Evan Holt had died 2 years ago. But before his death he had been living somewhere very close to the forest. His cabin. At sunrise, Collins drove to the address. A small wooden cabin deep near the trees. The place looked abandoned. Dust covered everything. But on one wall there were hundreds of drawings. Drawings made by a child. The same man. The same faceless figure. And the same weapons. But one drawing was different. It showed the tall man standing in front of the children. And written under it were chilling words. He doesn't choose the children. The children choose him. Then Collins heard something. A small sound behind her. Footsteps. She slowly turned around. Standing in the doorway of the cabin was Emily Torres, the little girl holding the axe. But she wasn't smiling anymore. Her face was completely blank. And behind her, more children appeared in the trees. Watching. Waiting. And one of them whispered something that made Detective Collins feel cold. Round 3 is almost ready. Detective Mara Collins slowly raised her hands. The small cabin was surrounded. Children stood between the trees. 26 of them. Dirty. Silent. Each holding a different weapon. Knives. Axes. Chains. Broken metal rods. And in the doorway stood Emily Torres, the 6-year-old girl holding the axe. The blade was still dark with dried blood. Collins spoke carefully. "Emily, where are your parents?" Emily didn't answer. She just tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to someone else. Someone who wasn't there. The whisper. Then Emily whispered quietly. Not to Collins, but to the air. "She wants to know the rules." The other children slowly turned their heads toward Collins. At the exact same time. And one boy stepped forward. Marcus Hill. His voice sounded strange. Flat. Empty. "The rules are simple. The weapons choose the players. The players finish the game." Collins realizes something. Detective Collins looked at the weapons in their hands. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. These were not random tools. Each one looked handmade, carefully built, balanced, almost like someone had designed them for the children. Then Collins remembered the wooden box in the forest, and the words carved on the lid. For the children. The old notebook. Inside the cabin Collins had already found something strange. A notebook belonging to Evan Holt, the boy who survived the first game in 1989. She opened it slowly. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, and drawings of weapons, axes, blades, chains. But on the first page were 5 disturbing words. "The weapons are not tools. They are keys." Keys to what? Collins kept reading. Evan had written about the night he disappeared in 1989. He said a man in the woods gave them weapons, then told them to play a game. A game where the children had to survive until morning. But the strange part was what happened after they picked up the weapons. Evan wrote, "When I touched the blade, I heard something. A voice. The weapon was speaking." Collins looks up. Detective Collins slowly raised her eyes from the notebook. The children were still standing outside, holding their weapons. Silent. Listening. Like they were waiting for the next command. Then Marcus lifted his metal rod slightly, and Collins heard something faint. A whisper. Coming from the weapon itself. The real horror. The weapons were not normal objects. Something inside them was alive. Something old. Something that could speak to the children. Not out loud, but inside their heads. Guiding them. Controlling them. Evan's final entry. Collins flipped to the last page of the notebook. The words were messy, like Evan had written them in fear. The man in the forest doesn't make the weapons. He only finds them. They were already here, buried under the town, waiting. Then the final sentence was written in large shaky letters. "They need children to play. Back in the cabin." Collins slowly looked at Emily again. "Who is talking to you?" she asked quietly. Emily smiled slightly. Then she raised the axe and pointed toward the forest. The one who started the first game. He is waking up. The ground outside suddenly made a strange sound. A deep cracking noise. Like something moving underground. The children all turned toward the forest. At the exact same moment. Something is coming. The trees began to shake. Birds flew into the air. Then from deep inside the forest, a tall shadow slowly stepped forward. Much taller than any man. Thin. Long arms. And in its hands, a weapon bigger than the rest. The same faceless figure from the drawings. The weapon maker. Detective Collins felt her heart pounding. Because the figure wasn't holding the weapon. The weapon was growing out of its arm. Metal and bone twisted together. Like it was part of its body. The creature stopped at the edge of the trees. Watching the children. Watching Collins. Then it spoke in a deep echoing voice. Round 3. Last players remain. Then something terrible happened. The children slowly turned toward each other. Not toward Collins. Toward each other. Marcus raised his metal rod. Emily tightened her grip on the axe. And one of the children whispered the words that made Collins realize the truth. Only one child wins. And suddenly, the children attacked each other. The fight started without warning. 1 second the children were standing still. The next second, they were attacking each other. Marcus swung the metal rod covered in nails. Another boy jumped back, holding a broken knife. Emily Torres gripped the axe with both hands. The sound of metal hitting metal echoed through the forest. Detective Mara Collins stood frozen inside the cabin doorway. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. These were children. But they were fighting like trained soldiers. Fast, silent, brutal. And none of them were crying. The creature watches. At the edge of the trees, the tall creature stood completely still. Watching. Its long arm twisted into a massive blade. The metal looked alive. Moving slightly. Breathing. Like it was part of the creature's body. Every time a child attacked another, the creature slowly tilted its head. Studying them. Judging them. Collins realizes the truth. Detective Collins suddenly understood something terrible. The creature was not stopping the fight. It was testing them. Choosing the strongest. Just like Evan Holt wrote in his notebook. Only one child would win the game. The fight gets worse. A loud scream finally broke the silence. One boy dropped his weapon and ran. But another child tackled him from behind. The weapon flashed. Then everything became quiet again. Collins felt sick. But she couldn't move. Because the creature slowly turned its head toward her. The creature speaks. Its voice sounded deep. Almost like many voices speaking together. Witness. You watch the game. Collins swallowed. What are you? She asked. For a moment the forest was silent. Then the creature answered. We are the keepers of the weapons. Your town built our prison. The hidden history. Collins remembered something from the old town records. In 1889, Harper's Creek was built on land that used to be a mining site. Workers had dug deep into the earth. But the mine was suddenly closed. The records never explained why. Now Collins understood. They hadn't found gold. They had found something buried. Something old. Something dangerous. The weapons. The weapons needed players. The creature continued speaking slowly. Long ago, the weapons were sealed underground. But humans broke the ground. Humans woke them. The creature pointed toward the children fighting. Children hear the weapons best. Children become the players. The game was never finished. Collins realized the horrifying truth. The game in 1989 was not the first one. And the game in 2025 would not be the last. As long as the weapons existed, the game would continue. Again. And again. And again. Only 3 left. The fight outside the cabin was almost over. Most of the children were lying on the ground. Silent. 3 were still standing. Marcus, Emily, and another boy named Tyler Grant. They were breathing heavily. holding their weapons tightly, watching each other, waiting for the final moment. The creature steps forward. The tall figure slowly walked closer. The ground shook slightly with every step. The children didn't run. They just stared at it, like they were waiting for instructions. The creature raised its blade arm and pointed toward the 3 remaining children. Final round. But something unexpected happened. Emily suddenly looked toward Detective Collins. For the first time, her eyes looked normal, like she was waking up. She whispered softly, "Help us." Then the axe in her hands started shaking. The weapon was fighting her, trying to control her again. The creature notices. The tall figure turned its head slowly, looking directly at Emily, then at Collins, and its voice became colder. The witness interferes. The creature lifted its blade arm and pointed it directly at Detective Collins. The new rule. Then it said something that made Collins' blood run cold. Round 6. Adults can play too. The 3 remaining children slowly turned toward Collins. Weapons raised. Eyes empty again. The game had changed. Now there were 4 players. The forest had become completely silent. 4 players were left. Marcus Hill, Emily Torres, Tyler Grant, and Detective Mara Collins. The tall creature stood behind them, watching, waiting. Its blade arm glistened in the moonlight. The voice came again. Slow, cold. Final round. Last one alive wins. The children turn. Marcus raised his metal rod. Tyler tightened his grip on the knife. Emily held the axe, but her hands were shaking. They slowly began walking toward Detective Collins. Collins' heart was pounding. She had no weapon, just Evan Holt's notebook in her hand. And suddenly she remembered something written inside it. A sentence she almost ignored. The weapons speak, but they can also be silenced. The hidden page. Collins quickly opened the notebook. One page was folded. Inside was a strange drawing. A symbol carved into the ground. A circle, with broken weapons inside it. And under it Evan had written, "The weapons only control you if you listen." Break their voice. Collins tries something. Marcus was now only a few steps away. He raised the rod. But Collins shouted loudly, "Drop the weapons!" Her voice echoed through the forest. For a moment nothing happened. Then Emily flinched. Her axe shook in her hands. Collins shouted again, "The weapons are lying to you." Emily fights back. Emily screamed suddenly. A real scream. She dropped the axe. The weapon hit the ground with a loud metal sound. And the whispering stopped. Emily fell to her knees, crying. The creature immediately turned toward her. Its voice became angry. Player broken. Player removed. The ground under Emily began to shake, like something below the earth was waking up. Collins realizes the final truth. The weapons were not just tools. They were feeding something underground. Every time the children fought, something below the town was growing stronger. That was the real purpose of the game. Not survival. Not victory. Sacrifice. The last choice. Marcus and Tyler were still holding their weapons. Their eyes empty. Controlled. Collins stepped forward slowly. "You don't have to listen to them," she said. "Throw them away." Tyler's knife trembled. For a moment it looked like he might drop it. But Marcus suddenly attacked. The metal rod swung through the air. Tyler raised his knife to defend himself. The final fight had begun. The creature moves. The tall creature stepped closer, watching the battle. Its blade arm glowing faintly now. The ground beneath the forest was rumbling louder. Something huge was moving below, waiting to be fed. Collins makes a decision. Detective Collins grabbed the axe Emily dropped. The weapon immediately began whispering in her mind. Dark thoughts. Violent thoughts. But Collins ignored them. Instead of attacking the children, she turned and ran toward the creature. The impossible moment. The creature looked surprised. No one had ever attacked it before. Collins screamed and swung the axe with all her strength. Not at the creature. At its blade arm. The metal cracked loudly. For a moment the forest went completely silent. Then the weapon shattered. Pieces of metal fell to the ground. And the whispering voices stopped. Everything changes. Marcus dropped his rod. Tyler dropped the knife. Like they had suddenly woken from a nightmare. The creature let out a horrible sound. A deep scream that shook the trees. The ground cracked open beneath it. The earth began pulling the creature downward. Back into the darkness below. The last words. Before it disappeared completely, the creature looked directly at Detective Collins. And whispered one final sentence. The weapons cannot be destroyed. Only buried again. Then it vanished into the ground. The forest became silent. The game was finally over. 6 months later, Harper's Creek tried to return to normal. The forest was sealed forever. The mine tunnels under the town were filled with concrete, and the remaining weapons were locked deep inside a government facility. Detective Collins left the town. She never wanted to see the forest again. But one night, thousands of miles away, inside a dark evidence storage room, a security camera recorded something strange. A metal weapon lying inside a locked box. Slowly moving. Very slightly. Then a faint whisper came from the box. Barely audible. But the camera microphone recorded it clearly. Round 1. The end.